The day I found out I was pregnant with twins, Vincent Castellano celebrated like a man who had been handed heaven. Fireworks over Brooklyn. Vows whispered against my stomach. Promises that his empire, his loyalty, and his life were mine. That same day, I found out the hospital built in my name had been sheltering his affair. While I was throwing up and fighting to keep our babies safe, he was holding another woman in the next room. So I made my choice. I would keep the twins. But Vincent Castellano would lose all three of us. The day I went for the abortion, I brought only the Castellano family's most loyal steward to an unmarked private clinic deep in Queens. Off the Castellano family's books entirely. A young nurse kept stealing glances at me before leaning over to whisper to her colleague, "Isn't that Donna Castellano? Why on earth would she be here alone for this?" Her colleague yanked her arm sharply. "Shut your mouth. The Don built her an entire private hospital. That can't be her. You're seeing things." "Ma'am, if you could just sign here," the nurse said, her voice cutting through my thoughts. I lowered my eyes to the consent form. On the television across the room, an interview with Vincent was playing on a loop. The notoriously cold-blooded Don of New York's most powerful crime family looked into the camera with a tenderness few people in the world had ever seen. "My wife is carrying twins," he said, his voice softening. "Watching how hard this pregnancy is on her breaks my heart. Once the babies are born, everything I own belongs to her and our children." The nurse let out a quiet sigh, her eyes full of envy. "You'll never find another man like Mr. Castellano in all of New York. They've been inseparable since they were kids." When the Castellano family was ambushed, he defied his own blood, wiped out the enemy compound, and proposed to her that same night. My pen froze above the paper. I remembered it all too well. When I was a child, the Castellas were betrayed from within, and my parents were slaughtered in cold blood. It was Vincent who had knelt before the heavens and sworn a blood oath to me that night. "Serafina, my life is yours. I will be your shield against every storm this world has to offer." For that promise, I had turned down an invitation to a top-secret national research laboratory, laid down my family's legacy, and become his Donna. In the end, he was the one who shattered that vow into a million pieces. They were right, of course. Vincent Castellano had loved me with a devotion that made the whole city believe I was the luckiest woman alive. I had been frail since childhood, so he built Serafina Private Hospital for me, filled it with the finest medical minds on the East Coast, and opened its doors to the public free of charge in my name, all to earn blessings for my health. He never knew that the very afternoon I confirmed the twins, I received explicit nude photos from his mistress, Isabella Rossi. That was the moment I realized the hospital bearing my name had long since ceased to mean me. During my first trimester, while I was hospitalized and drifting in and out of consciousness from violent morning sickness, Vincent had been in the room next door, tangled in the sheets with her. The second I saw those photos, I knew these children did not deserve to be born into a marriage already rotting from the inside out. The nurse spoke again, gentle now, but firm with professional warning. "Ma'am, the twins are developing perfectly. Are you absolutely certain you want to go through with this? A twin termination carries significant health risks, and given your medical history, it could leave you unable to conceive again." Her words jolted me back to myself. These children were innocent. They carried my blood, the last of the Castellano line. What I wanted to destroy was not them. It was the life he had poisoned. Vincent was the one I should have cut out. "I've changed my mind," I said abruptly, turning to my steward. "We're not doing this procedure." Once we were outside, I spoke again. "Contact the professor at the lab. Tell him I accept his offer to join the classified project. And arrange a new identity for me. Completely clean. No ties to either family. No paper trail whatsoever." My steward hesitated for only a second before bowing his head in silent assent. When the professor heard my decision, he texted me at once. "Serafina, I'm glad, though my heart aches for you. But you must understand. Once you enter this project, you sever all contact with the outside world. Think carefully before you reply." His offer had not been new. He had asked me more than once over the years to join the project, and every time, I had refused for Vincent. This time, I did not hesitate. I replied at once, reaffirming my decision. I knew better than anyone how all-consuming Vincent Castellano's need for control was. He would tear the world apart to find me. And so there was only one way forward. Serafina Castellano had to vanish from this world completely. When I returned to the villa, Vincent was already home. He strode toward me, his voice thick with worry. "Where were you? You weren't answering your phone. You shook your security detail. I had half the crew out looking for you. I'm sorry, there was an emergency with the family." I turned my head slightly, pretending not to see the fresh hickey peeking out from the unbuttoned collar of his tailored dress shirt. "Just went for a walk. Felt trapped in these four walls." He exhaled in relief, gesturing to the spread of pastries on the table. It were my favorites, from the patisserie right next to Serafina Private Hospital, the only place in the city that made them exactly how I liked them. "It's my fault. I should have been here with you. It won't happen again, I promise." Once, I would have taken this as irrefutable proof of his love. The truth was, he'd just left Isabella's arms at that very hospital. This was his guilty penance, a half-hearted offering for the sin he'd just committed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from Isabella. Don't think sitting on the Donna's throne means you've won, she purred in the message. I'm the one he wants to wake up to every morning. I didn't care about her petty games. I only found the man before me utterly unfathomable. He would spiral into a blind panic if I didn't reply to his texts within minutes. Yet while I carried his airs and suffered through the agony of early pregnancy, he sought solace in another woman's bed. He'd even built her a goddamn hospital. When I stayed silent, Vincent grew anxious, reaching for my hand. Baby, did I upset you? Hit me, yell at me, whatever you need to get it out. Just don't bottle it up. You'll hurt yourself, and the babies. His palm burned hot against mine, but all I felt was a violent wave of nausea. I wrenched my hand away and doubled over, retching violently. I knew he had a severe, almost pathological hatred of mess, yet he didn't hesitate for a second, stepping right behind me to hold my hair back. Thankfully, I'd barely eaten in days. Nothing came up but bitter bile that stung my throat and brought stinging tears to my eyes. He swept me up into his arms, carrying me up the grand staircase and laying me gently on our bed with infinite care. I believed his concern in that moment was real, but so was his betrayal. That night, my steward sent me a secure message. He'd finalized every detail with the professor, secured my new identity, and prepared every element of my staged death. The registered vehicle, pre-prepared DNA samples, the extraction route, the boat waiting on the Hudson. All was in place. That night, I told Vincent I wasn't feeling well and shut myself off from him. He had the housekeeper make me a tonic from my mother's old recipe. Since I'd conceived, he wouldn't let me do a single thing, not dry my hair, not bend down to pick up a pen, not even open a car door for myself. The maids always whispered, "A man like the Don is 1 in a million. When Donna has the baby, he'll pluck the stars right out of the sky for her." Vincent heard them, stepped outside to make a quick call, then returned to me with a smile. "Darling, I'm taking you to the Hayden Planetarium this weekend. Rented the whole thing out. I got you a gift. I had a star named after you. The catalog number's our wedding date. Serafina, I know you've been low these last few weeks. I know this pregnancy is hell on you, and I hate that I can't take the pain away. All I can do is to make you smile." He sat beside me, his voice softening. He would never know those two lives almost never made it into the world at all. When the weekend came, Vincent had the entire planetarium lit only with the projected night sky, just for the two of us. He held my hand as we walked through the starlit halls, pointing out constellations for me. "Look right there," he said. "That's your star. A testament to our love. When the children are born, we'll bring them here, and tell them how their mama and papa's love is as eternal as the stars themselves." Just then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening for a split second, then turned to me with that apologetic look I'd come to loathe. "I'm sorry, baby. Family emergency. I have to go handle it. I'll be back before you know it, I swear." Seconds after he walked out the door, my phone buzzed. A photo from Isabella. Another framed star naming certificate, this one emblazoned with Vincent and Isabella. Her text followed a moment later. "Wondering if he'd rather stargaze with you, or have a little fun with me under the starlight roof in that Rolls you got him for his birthday. He's on his way over right now, Donna." A fist closed around my heart, squeezing so tight I could barely breathe. That car, the custom Rolls-Royce Phantom, had been my birthday gift to him. He'd spent a fortune modifying the starlight roof, carving our initials into the leather, saying the stars would bear witness to our blood oath. Now it was the backdrop for his infidelity. A video followed right after. Isabella lay in the passenger seat, the starlight glowing behind her as she smirked into the camera. "He says it's thrilling," she whispered. "Like doing it right in front of your face. I suggested we do it in your bed, while you sleep. Think he said yes?" I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white, hot tears spilling down my cheeks before I could stop them. When Vincent returned and saw me crying, he panicked instantly, his hands flying to my shoulders. "Hey, what's wrong? Don't you like the gift? Did I do something? Did someone touch you? Tell me who it is, and I'll put a bullet in their head tonight." His concern was identical to that of the boy who'd taken a bullet to the ribs to keep me from getting hurt when we were kids. But that same boy had grown into the man who'd hurt me worse than any rival crew ever could. I lifted my tear-streaked face, choking back the sob in my throat. "No. I just love the gift so much. I'm overwhelmed." I forced a weak, wobbly smile. "As a thank you, I have a surprise for you too. You'll get it in a few days on our anniversary." Vincent let out a huge sigh of relief, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, and held me tight. "You silly girl. I'd give you the whole world just to see you smile. If you love the stars, I'll build you a whole goddamned planetarium. When the babies come, we'll live quiet, like we always wanted. No more wars, no more crews. Just us." He rambled on about a future that no longer included me. Just then, my burner phone buzzed in my purse. A secure message from the professor had come through. Security clearance approved. Identity transfer protocol has passed final review. Once signed, all records connected to your current identity will be sealed and inaccessible for 10 years. No public legal, medical, financial, or government trace will remain. Confirm signature. My thumb hovered over the screen for less than a second. 10 years. That was not enough. If Vincent Castellano could choose Isabella, then I could choose disappearance. Not for 10 years. For the rest of my life. I signed without a moment's hesitation. Then I lifted my eyes to the man still holding me and smiled faintly against his shoulder. Vincent Castellano, tomorrow, I will vanish from your world forever. The next day, our wedding anniversary arrived. I woke before sunrise and went downstairs before the kitchen staff had even started the day. For once, I wanted to make Vincent breakfast with my own hands. When he walked into the kitchen and saw me standing at the stove, he crossed the room in seconds, snatched the spatula from my hand, and pulled me against his chest, half angry, half frightened. What are you doing in here? You're pregnant. You shouldn't be standing over a hot stove. Where's the staff? Today's our anniversary, I said softly. I wanted to be alone with you for a little while. His eyes reddened at once. He buried his face in my hair and held me as if I might vanish the moment he let go. I should be the one doing this for you. All I want in this life is for my wife to be happy. Every single day. If Isabella hadn't shown me the truth, I might have believed I was the luckiest woman alive. But the blood oath had already been broken. There was no going back. Just then, the phone he had left on the kitchen counter lit up and began to vibrate. I glanced at the screen, then picked it up and handed it to him. You have a message. Vincent tensed for a split second, then relaxed when he saw my calm expression. That's my girl. Never checks my phone, never gives me grief. Trusts me. He thought I was noble. He thought I was naive. He never imagined I knew every single detail of his betrayal. He'd hidden behind my trust, making up endless excuses to slip away and be with her. Every time she called, he ran. Isabella had just texted me, gloating that she was pregnant, that my greatest leverage was gone, that she would be the one to sit on the Castellano throne. She told me Vincent was taking her for a prenatal checkup that morning, and had promised to find a way to make me accept her child as my own. Vincent read the message, then turned back to me, his voice smooth. Baby, I have to go. Those Moretti bastards are making trouble on the docks again. I didn't call him out on his lie. I just smiled up at him. Be careful. And when you get back, don't forget to open the anniversary gift on the coffee table. It's for you. Vincent kissed the top of my head, grabbed his gun from the hall table, and hurried out the door. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I sent my steward a one-word text, execute. Then I placed my phone, along with every photo, video, and chat log Isabella had ever sent me, into the hand-carved wooden box. My anniversary gift to Vincent. By the time he opened it, Serafina Corleone would already be dead. I picked up my pre-packed bag and got into the unmarked car waiting at the gate. As we passed Serafina Private Hospital, I saw Vincent's Rolls-Royce parked outside. He was already there. I watched him go around to the passenger side and help Isabella out with the same care he had once reserved for me. Beneath the gold letters of the hospital built in my name, my husband escorted his mistress inside for her prenatal checkup. My steward met my eyes in the rearview mirror. Donna, should I stop? I looked at Vincent one last time. At the hospital. At the woman beside him. At the life I had once mistaken for love. Then I turned away. No, I said. Keep driving. Let him go to her. Let him lie to me one last time. Let him open the box and learn what his betrayal had cost him. From this moment on, Serafina Corleone no longer existed. She died on her wedding anniversary. The rain began to fall as we crossed the Queensboro Bridge, heavy and unforgiving, washing the city in a gray blur. I didn't look back at the skyline. I didn't look back at Brooklyn, where my husband ruled, or at the hospital where he was currently playing the devoted expectant father to a woman who hated me. The extraction team is in position, Donna, Matteo said, his voice steady. He had served my father before me. His loyalty was to the blood in my veins, not the ring on my finger. Don't call me that anymore, Matteo, I replied, staring at the droplets racing across the tinted glass. The Donna died today. Understood, Miss Casella. The plan was a masterpiece of misdirection, designed by the brilliant minds at the laboratory I was joining. An hour from now, a black SUV identical to this one, registered under a shell company tied to the Castellano family, would plunge off a remote cliffside road in upstate New York, bursting into flames upon impact. Inside would be 2 bodies sourced from the morgue, altered with my dental records and the DNA I had meticulously harvested over the past week. Hair from my brush, blood from a fake glucose test. By the time Vincent's men put out the fire, there would be nothing left but ash, charred metal, and undeniable proof that his pregnant wife had burned to death. We arrived at the private airstrip just as my burner phone blinked with an incoming news alert. But it wasn't the crash. It was a text from Isabella. He just heard the baby's heartbeat. He cried, Serafina. He actually cried. What did he do when you had your ultrasound? Check his watch. I stared at the glowing screen. A month ago, those words would have drawn blood. Today, they felt like reading a dispatch from a foreign country I no longer lived in. I powered down the phone, removed the SIM card, and snapped it in half. I dropped the pieces into a nearby storm drain. Ready? The professor asked as I approached the idling jet. He was an older man with sharp eyes, the director of the underground DARPA-funded medical research facility, where I would spend the next decade of my life. More than ready, I said, stepping onto the stairs. As the plane lifted into the storm clouds, leaving New York and Vincent Castellano behind forever, I rested my hand on my stomach. The nausea had faded. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I would learn the details of the aftermath much later, through the heavily encrypted intelligence reports Matteo smuggled to me over the years. I needed to know the threat level. I needed to know if the ghost of Vincent Castellano was still hunting me. He was. But he was hunting a corpse. According to Matteo's reports, Vincent had returned to the villa high on the adrenaline of his lies. He had walked into the living room, stripping off his wet jacket, calling my name. He found the house empty. The staff had been dismissed for the holiday. And then he saw the hand-carved wooden box on the coffee table. When Vincent opened it, he didn't find the vintage Patek Philippe watch or the custom cufflinks he likely expected. He found a stack of glossy photographs. He saw himself, asleep in the hospital bed, Isabella's manicured hand resting on his bare chest. He saw screenshots of her text to me. Every taunt. Every explicit threat. Every boast about the hospital he built for me. At the very bottom of the box was a single piece of heavy cardstock. I had written only one sentence. I know. Matteo's contacts in the Castellano crew reported that the scream Vincent let out shattered the absolute silence of the villa. It was the sound of a man being torn apart by wild dogs. He had torn the living room to pieces, flipping the heavy mahogany tables, smashing the mirrors, roaring for his guards. He was mid-rampage, bleeding from his hands, when his underboss burst through the front door, pale and trembling. Boss, the man had stammered. It's the Donna. Her car, upstate. It went off the ridge. Vincent had beaten the man half to death for saying it. He drove upstate himself, hitting speeds of 140, only to arrive at a smoking crater. He had fallen to his knees in the mud and the ash. He tried to crawl into the burning wreckage with his bare hands, screaming my name, screaming for our babies, until 6 of his own men had to tackle him to the ground to keep him from burning alive with the corpses. That night, the Don of the Castellano family died too. What rose from the mud was a monster. He didn't mourn quietly. He returned to the city like a plague. His first stop was Serafina Private Hospital. Isabella was resting in her VIP suite, likely dreaming of the crown she thought she had finally won. Vincent walked past her security, locked the door behind him, and threw the wooden box onto her bed. Matteo's report on this was clinical, but the horror bled through the ink. Vincent didn't kill her. That would have been a mercy. He sat in a chair by the window, a loaded gun resting on his knee, and looked at her with eyes so hollow, so devoid of human warmth, that Isabella had soiled herself in terror. You sent her these, Vincent had whispered, his voice dead. You broke her heart while she was carrying my children. And then she drove away to cry, and she burned. Isabella begged. She pleaded for her life, holding her stomach, reminding him of their child. Vincent's smile had been a grimace of pure madness. That, he said, pointing the gun at her belly. That is a parasite. It fed on my wife's misery. He didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he systematically dismantled Isabella's life. He had his doctors perform a forced termination. He stripped her of all her wealth, her family's protection, and exiled her to a human trafficking slum in Eastern Europe, selling her to men far worse than him. He burned the Serafina Private Hospital to the ground with his own hands, pouring the gasoline himself, watching the flames consume the monument to his hypocrisy. Over the next 5 years, Vincent turned New York into a slaughterhouse. He wiped out rival families, his own capos who looked at him wrong, anyone who breathed out of turn. He became a recluse, living in the dark, staring at the starlight roof of a Rolls-Royce he refused to drive, clutching a charred piece of metal from a car crash. He was the undisputed king of the underworld, and he was rotting in his own personal hell. 6 years later, Dr. Casella, the centrifuge sequence is complete. I blinked, pulling my eyes away from the microscope. The sterile, white light of the underground laboratory hummed above me. Thank you, David. Prepare the beta samples for the incubator, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. Mama. I turned just in time to catch a small, dark-haired missile that launched into my knees. I smiled, the coldness of my work instantly melting away. I scooped up Elena, burying my face in her soft curls. What are you doing out of the residential wing, little bird? I asked softly. Behind her, walking with a calm, measured pace that always made my heart ache with recognition, was Leo. At 5.5 years old, my son was a terrifyingly quiet child. He had my eyes but his jaw, the dark brooding slope of his brows, that was all Castellano. Elena bypassed the biometric lock on the rec room door again. Leo said, his voice flat, hands tucked into the pockets of his miniature lab coat. I told her it was a security violation. I wanted to see you, Elena pouted, wrapping her arms around my neck. I kissed her cheek and ruffled Leo's hair. It's all right. Just don't let the director catch you. My twins. They were brilliant, healthy, and entirely mine. Growing up in a classified government research facility, surrounded by the greatest scientific minds in the country, had turned them into eccentric little prodigies. They knew nothing of the mafia, of blood oaths, or of the man who had torn my world apart. To them, the world was safe, logical, and filled with love. Dr. Casella. The PA system crackled, the director's voice sounding unusually strained. Report to the secure communications room immediately. Priority 1. My blood chilled. Priority 1 meant a breach in our external supply chains. I handed Elena to Leo. Take your sister back to the quarters. Lock the door. Do not bypass the pad. Leo nodded, his dark eyes serious. Yes, Mama. I hurried down the stainless steel corridors to the comms room. The director was standing in front of a bank of monitors, his face pale. Beside him stood Matteo, who now managed the lab's external logistics. What's happened? I demanded. Matteo looked at me, his jaw tight. Our transport convoy out of New York was intercepted. We were moving the synthetic isotopes we need for the Phase 3 trials. Intercepted by who? The feds. No. The director said heavily. The Castellano family. Vincent's men are tearing up the docks looking for a rival cruise shipment. Our trucks got caught in the crossfire. They seized the trucks, assuming it was cartel contraband. My heart stopped. For 6 years, I had not heard that name spoken aloud. They don't know what they have, Matteo continued. But the isotopes are highly unstable. If his men try to force the containers open, it will wipe out a 3-block radius. We have to negotiate the release. Then let the military handle it, I said, my voice hardening. Send a Black Ops team. We can't, the director said. The project is off the books. If the military engages Castellano, the press gets involved. The facility gets exposed. We have exactly 4 hours before the internal coolant in those containers fails. Someone has to call Castellano and tell him the passcode to stabilize the locks, then negotiate the return. He's paranoid, Matteo warned. He executes anyone who calls him uninvited. He only answers to one frequency, a dark web channel his underboss monitors. But if he hears a government negotiator, he'll blow the trucks just to spite us. He needs to hear a voice that commands absolute authority, the director said. Someone who can convince him to back down without triggering his rage. Silence fell over the room. Both men looked at me. I felt a cold sweat break out over my skin. No. Serafina. Matteo said gently. If that shipment blows, thousands of civilians die. And years of your work here is destroyed. I stared at the encrypted telephone on the console. It was a heavy, ugly black thing. It felt like a snake coiled on the desk. I closed my eyes. I thought of the innocent people on those docks. I thought of my children sleeping down the hall. I walked over to the console and picked up the receiver. Dial the frequency. Matteo punched in the numbers. The line hissed with static, then clicked. Who the fuck is this? A rough voice barked. The underboss. Put Castellano on the line, I said. My voice was no longer the soft, accommodating tone of a mafia wife. It was the ice-cold precision of a lead scientist. You got 10 seconds to tell me how you got this number before I track it and slit your throat. You have a shipment of 3 black steel containers on Pier 44, I said coldly. If you do not stabilize them in 3 hours, they will detonate and vaporize you and half of Brooklyn. Put Vincent on the line. Now. There was a pause. Muttering in the background. Then the sound of a heavy door opening. A new breath on the line. A heavy, slow, ragged breath. Who is this? The voice sent a physical shockwave through my chest. It was rougher, deeper, ravaged by whiskey and cigarettes and years of screaming. It was the voice of the boy who had promised to be my shield. I dug my nails into my palm to steady myself. Vincent. The silence on the line was so absolute I thought the connection had dropped. When he spoke again, it wasn't a word. It was a strangled, terrifying sound, like a man drowning, clawing his way to the surface. Serafina? His voice broke on the syllables. The sheer, naked agony in that one word made the director look away. The containers on Pier 44, I said, ignoring his reaction, forcing my voice to remain a machine. The keypad requires a 9-digit stabilization code. Do you have a pen? Serafina, he gasped. The sound of a chair crashing to the floor echoing through the speaker. Oh my God. Oh my God, you're alive. Where are you? Baby, please, where are you? The code is 842. Talk to me, he roared, the sound of glass shattering behind him. Are you hurt? Who took you? I'll kill them. I'll burn the whole fucking country to the ground. Just tell me where you are. No one took me, Vincent, I said softly, the ice in my voice finally cracking to reveal the absolute steel beneath. I left. A breathless silence. You left, he whispered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't tracking a kidnapping anymore. He was looking at his own ghost. I left you a box 6 years ago. I thought my message was clear. The fire. He choked out, his voice trembling so violently the phone rattled against his jaw. The car. I held the metal. I buried the ashes, Fina. I buried you. You buried a fiction. Just like our marriage. I glanced at the clock. You have 2 hours and 40 minutes. Enter the code, secure the perimeter, and walk away. A team will retrieve the cargo. I'm not letting them take anything until I see you, he said, a sudden, desperate panic seizing his tone. I'll detonate it myself. I don't care if I die. I don't care if the city burns. I need to see you. Please. 5 minutes. 1 minute. Just let me look at you. He was holding a city block hostage for a glimpse of my face. He hadn't changed. He was still a slave to his obsession. I looked at the director. He gave a slow, reluctant nod. Fine, I said. Mateo will send you a coordinate. Come alone. Unarmed. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. The rendezvous point was a decommissioned subway station far beneath the streets of Manhattan, a neutral zone that connected to the outer perimeter of our lab. It was dimly lit by emergency fluorescents, the air smelling of ozone and damp earth. I stood on the platform, flanked by 4 heavily armed tactical guards. I wore a crisp white coat over black slacks, my hair pulled back in a severe twist. I was not the fragile Donna he remembered. I was someone else entirely. Footsteps echoed down the concrete stairs. Slow. Heavy. Vincent emerged from the shadows. The breath caught in my throat, though my face remained a mask. He looked terrible. The handsome, untouchable Don I had married was gone. His hair was peppered with gray, his eyes sunken and surrounded by bruised, sleepless flesh. He wore a dark suit that hung slightly loose on his frame, as if he frequently forgot to eat. When his eyes locked onto mine, he stopped dead. He didn't breathe. He just stared, his chest heaving, his eyes filling with a rapid, overflowing tide of tears. He took a step forward. My guards instantly raised their rifles, the red laser sights painting his chest. Vincent didn't even look at the guns. He kept walking until he was 10 feet away, stopping only when the lead guard racked his bolt. It's really you, Vincent whispered. He fell to his knees on the filthy concrete. The Don of New York, a man who bowed to no god, collapsed in front of me, sobbing. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with the violence of his grief. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. He chanted into the dirt. I looked down at him, feeling an odd sense of detachment. I had cried an ocean for this man. But the well was completely dry. The stabilizing codes, I said coldly, holding out a piece of paper. Take them. Release the trucks. He looked up, his face slick with tears, his eyes begging. I'm sorry. Fina, I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I was sick in the head. I destroyed Isabella. I destroyed it all. I've lived in hell every single day since you died. Please, let me make it right. Come home. Home, I echoed, a humorless smile touching my lips. To the house you bought with blood money? To the bed where you slept with another woman while I was vomiting in the bathroom? Vincent flinched as if I had shot him. I was stupid. I was weak. But I love you. I've always loved you. Love does not humiliate, Vincent. Love does not betray. I stepped closer, looking down at the broken man. You didn't love me. You loved the idea of me. You loved owning the last daughter of the Casella family. You loved playing the hero who saved me, while secretly proving you could do whatever you wanted behind my back. No, he begged, crawling a foot closer, reaching out a trembling hand to touch the hem of my coat. I stepped back, out of his reach. He let his hand fall to the dirt. I'll give up the family. I'll disband the crew. We can go anywhere. I have billions, Serafina. We can disappear. I already disappeared, I said simply. And my life is perfect. Suddenly, the heavy steel door behind me creaked open. Manga. My blood turned to ice. I spun around. Leo was standing in the doorway, clutching a small tablet. He must have followed me, slipping through the security doors while the guards were focused on the exchange. Leo, go back inside immediately. I snapped, my heart hammering against my ribs. But it was too late. Vincent's head snapped up at the word mama. He looked past me, his bloodshot eyes landing on the small boy in the doorway. Leo stared back at him. The resemblance was undeniable. The dark eyes, the sharp jaw, the defiant tilt of the chin. It was like looking at a ghost of Vincent from 30 years ago. Vincent stopped breathing entirely. He slowly rose to his feet, swaying slightly, his eyes locked on Leo. "A boy," Vincent whispered, the sound tearing from his throat. "You, they survived? He has nothing to do with you." I said, stepping sharply between them, blocking his view. Take the codes and leave, Vincent. My son, Vincent said, the tears returning with redoubled force. He stepped toward us, ignoring the rifles. I have a son. You kept my son. He is my son, I hissed. Leo, sensing the danger, stepped around me and stood protectively in front of my legs. He looked up at the towering, weeping mafia boss with absolute coldness. Do not speak to my mother, Leo said, his 5-year-old voice steady and devoid of fear. Vincent froze. The boy's eyes, his own eyes, were looking at him not with love, or even fear, but with the sterile clinical disgust of a scientist examining a rat. Hey little guy, Vincent choked out, trying to force a gentle smile through his tears. He dropped to one knee again. I'm your papa. Leo didn't flinch. He looked up at me. Mama, is this the man you said we don't need? The words echoed in the cavernous subway station. Vincent recoiled, a ragged gasp escaping his lips. The final blow. The one no bullet could ever match. He looked at me, the devastation in his eyes complete. He realized, in that singular moment, that he hadn't just lost his wife. He had lost his legacy. The children he had promised to show the stars to were alive, and they didn't even know his name. Worse, they felt nothing for him. I reached down and took Leo's hand. Leave the trucks, Vincent, I said, my voice quiet now, empty of anger. Go back to your empire. If you ever look for me again, if you ever try to track my children, I will take them to a country where you will never find us. And I will make sure the last thing they know about you is the truth of what you really are. Vincent stayed on his knees. The fight had completely drained out of him. The monster of New York was dead, leaving only a hollow, empty shell. He looked at the piece of paper in his hand. The stabilization codes. I'll release them, he whispered to the ground. I'll make sure the convoy is escorted safely. He slowly looked up, his eyes lingering on Leo's face for one desperate, agonizing second, trying to memorize a son he would never hold. Then he looked at me. I kept the vow, Fina, he said, his voice breaking. I swore I'd be your shield against the storm. Even if I'm the storm. Goodbye, Vincent. I turned my back on him. I didn't look over my shoulder as I walked through the steel doors with my son. I didn't listen to the heavy, broken sobs that echoed through the concrete tunnels behind me. The Castellano empire quietly dismantled itself over the next 2 years. Vincent didn't die. That would have been too easy. Instead, he liquidated his illegal assets, violently purged the violent factions of his own family, and created a massive, untraceable shell corporation. Through Mateo, I learned that millions of dollars were being anonymously funneled into the DARPA laboratory's funding accounts. Whenever our supply chains faced bureaucratic hurdles or cartel threats, the problems simply vanished overnight. Vincent Castellano became a shadow. He surrendered his life, his pride, and his throne to become the silent, invisible guard dog standing outside the gates of a life he was forbidden to enter. He watched the stars from the back of a parked Rolls-Royce, knowing that somewhere, miles beneath the earth, the woman he loved and the children he lost were shining without him. And as I sat in the residential wing, listening to Elena laugh while Leo read her a book on astrophysics, I smiled. I had made my choice. I kept the twins. And Vincent Castellano lost all 3 of us, exactly as I promised.